Dick here with today's Life app, and we're talking about how to maintain your life in the parameters of success. And some people call it accountability. I believe that it's broader than that. It's actually more positive. It's staying in a circumference or a measure where God's blessing is upon your life. When you're engaged in what God has called you to do, He'll empower you to do it. The person I want to talk about today, though, is Daniel, because there's a beautiful scripture here in Daniel chapter 3. Daniel's a favorite of mine. I have a grandson named Daniel, and he's just awesome. He's such an intelligent young guy. I think he's going to be like Daniel of the Bible. But Daniel, brimming with the spirit and intelligence, so completely outclassed the other vice-regents and governors that the king decided to put him in charge of the whole kingdom. The vice-regents and the governors got together to find some old scandal or skeleton in Daniel's life that they could use against him, but they couldn't dig up anything. He was so totally exemplary and trustworthy. They could find no evidence of negligence or misconduct. This really is an example of a young man who really kept himself inside the measure of God's blessing. And it isn't that we aren't free to go beyond that. The grace of God covers us no matter what has happened in our lives. It's just that experience teaches us to stay in that parameter because that's where God empowers us. Daniel was a perfect example, and if you probably are familiar with these scriptures of Daniel because it talks about his excellence of spirit. But Daniel, if you have to think, was a captive. He was taken in captivity from Jerusalem to Persia, which, by the way, is a long, long ways away, present-day Iran, and then had to fit into a whole new culture. Everything was taken from him. The city of Jerusalem, the temple, everything was destroyed. So you can understand just where this man really was in terms of his mindset. Here's some things I want to point out about Daniel. Daniel got beyond victim thinking. He was able to think beyond victim thinking. He was, really, how many people that you run into every day that have this kind of mindset? They're victims. They think that, everyone owes them something. And if something has gone wrong, then, they didn't deserve that. I've heard people say, well, I did everything right. Well, I didn't deserve this. Well, unfortunately, that's the way this world works. It's not perfect, that's for sure. And, you can be an absolutely safe driver, wear your seatbelt and drive responsibly, and somebody on the other lane can be a DUI and he can be without, seatbelts and can crash into your car, and you can have fatalities in your car and he walks away without injury. How does that add up? It does happen that way, and sometimes we end up in victim thinking because of it. But really, Daniel said, I'm not going to be a victim. Wherever I am, I can be blessed. And that's what we have to remember. God sends, maybe it's a bubble. God sends a bubble where if we stay inside that measure, inside that bubble, I don't know if that's the right name for it, we will prosper no matter where you put us. Take us out. Joseph's a good example. Joseph, he was prospering in his father's home. And then he was taken captivity to Egypt and was placed into Potiphar's house as a slave. But it says he began to prosper. Next thing you know, he's in charge of the whole household. Then things go sideways there for him. He could have been a victim. But no, he goes to prison. What do you find about him in prison? Again, he begins to prosper because he realized, wherever I am, the blessing is on me. A man came and said to me about 3 years ago, when everything was unraveling in my life and losing the ministry that we had built, this national ministry, he said, Dick, I have a word for you. This man's name is Curtis. He's from Sudbury, Ontario. He drove 8 hours to give me this word. He said, Dick, I have a word for you. The blessing's on the well digger, not the well. The focus that God has is on you and the favor and blessing He has on your life. If you get above that, you will be a success. That's today's Life app.